Let me tell you my big point here. Robert Mueller should forget trying to impeach Donald Trump. Robert Mueller should just focus on indicting Donald Trump. That is my view. Indict Trump, forget impeachment. And here's why I come at this from this. We all agree no one is above the law, not even the president of the United States. I bet you even Trumpers would. The proposition that no one is above the law is part of the DNA of this nation. Our founding fathers in the Declaration of Independence rebelled against the king who viewed himself as above the law. And in the Declaration of Independence, they talked about this king waging tyranny over the states. That was why our nation was created, to get away from the idea that there's a king who's above the law. And our Supreme Court has repeatedly reaffirmed that, most famously in 1974, when Richard Nixon was served with a subpoena by then the special prosecutor who wanted tapes and documents. And Nixon goes, nope, I don't have to give it. I'm the president. And the Supreme Court said, no one's above the law, not even a president. And they ordered him to turn over the documents. So how do we ensure that Donald Trump is not above the law? From a practical matter, the only way is Robert Mueller must indict Donald Trump. That's the only way. And I'll explain why. Because yesterday, we heard Michael Cohen, it was reported, we didn't hear it, I wish we had the audio, that he had violated 2 Federal Election Commission laws. And in quotes, he said he did this for the principal purpose of influencing the election in 2016. That's his words under oath before a judge. Again, it's under oath. So he's also potentially perjuring himself if he's lying there. And while under oath, Cohen said he did this, quote, in coordination with and at the direction of a candidate for federal office. That person, he didn't say this part, but that person, of course, was Donald Trump. That's who he did it for. And as Danny Savalas mentioned yesterday when he was here, in these cases in federal court, they do not name other people unless they're named defendants. So they're not saying Donald Trump's name, but they're not hiding it either. It's Donald Trump. Now, by Michael Cohen testifying under oath that he made these payments to Stormy Daniels and to Karen McDougal through the National Enquirer for the purpose of influencing the election, it was a campaign contribution. There's no doubt it's a campaign contribution under Federal Election Commission laws, no doubt. Then he adds he did it in coordination with and at the direction of a candidate for federal office, that being Donald Trump. Meaning now he has brought into this crime a conspirator. In fact, not only a co-conspirator, I would say from his own language here, he did it at the direction of Donald Trump. Donald Trump directed a crime to be committed. 2 crimes to violate Federal Election Commission laws twice. Donald Trump saying the money is not from the campaign, from his own pocket. He's just trying to mislead people. That means nothing. The crime here is knowing and willfully violating Federal Election Commission laws. And specifically, it is paying off Karen McDougal through a third party and Stormy Daniels right before the election and not reporting that in Federal Election Commission laws, not reporting it, intentionally not reporting it, because they had an obligation to report it right away. And here's what would have happened. If they had reported it, what would have happened? The media gets it's a public record, and they begin asking questions. Who is this weird payment for $150,000 to National Enquirer? Why is this payment from this weird company called Essential Consulting all of a sudden through the campaign paying Stephanie Clifford? And they had to conceal it because it would have raised an issue. So they concealed it on purpose. Just like the Trump meeting in Trump Tower, this was only discovered inadvertently through other ways. They didn't ever come forward and release this. So you have the Federal Election Commission law violation. That is a crime, and the crime is knowing and willfully violating Federal Election Commission laws. If you have any doubt if it's a crime, ask Dinesh D'Souza, who got 5 years probation, including about 8 months community service, living in a place. And Donald Trump, of course, pardoned Dinesh D'Souza. And now, in retrospect, it looks like he did that with an eye towards knowing that he was guilty of Federal Election Commission law violations. He's trying to make it no big deal. So here's the thing. We've got a crime committed by Michael Cohen. He pled guilty. It's undisputed. And in his testimony yesterday, he said Donald Trump directed him to do that. Donald Trump's a co-conspirator in a crime. If Donald Trump was not president, the investigation would now result in Donald Trump being investigated and charged with a crime. There's no doubt. There's no doubt. In fact, Michael Cohen would not have testified yesterday. He would not have pled. He would have been cooperating, and they would have had a trial perhaps with Donald Trump. In any event, Donald Trump would be getting charged. There's no disputing. It's only because he's a president of the United States. The question becomes, do we have to wait until he's out of office via impeachment, resignation, or his term ending? There's no dispute the president is not above the law. There's no that he is not above the law. Any crimes he commits, he will be charged. He will be brought to justice. The question is, when can he be charged? That's the only question. Now, Rudy Giuliani said Mueller can indict, he can only do a report. And obviously, Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump know what happens then. Robert Mueller gives a report just like Kenneth Starr and recommends certain articles of impeachment. Then it takes the GOP-controlled Congress to do something. Well, their silence since yesterday makes it very clear they will do nothing. So Kenneth Starr, Robert Mueller can give a detailed report with 5 or 6 articles of impeachment. Obstruction of justice on 2 counts, co-conspiracy to violate Federal Election Commission laws on 2 counts, and even conspiracy to defraud the United States of America, which is interacting with the Russians, knowing that they were trying to hack our elections. All of that can be laid out, and they'll do nothing. They might have a few show hearings, but they will not impeach Donald Trump, nor will they ever try him. So by not doing that, the result is that these charges against Donald Trump just sit there waiting for 2 years or even 6 years. And as time goes on, memories of witnesses fade, evidence gets lost. Ultimately, Donald Trump becomes above the law if you wait for impeachment. So my point is, waiting for impeachment by Republican-controlled Congress, that's never going to happen. And waiting for 2 years from now when he's out of office, or 6 years from now if he's reelected, is putting Donald Trump above the law. There's only one way to send a message that no one's above the law, and that is for Robert Mueller to indict Donald Trump. I want to be 100% clear here, because there's also misinformation by, can you indict a sitting president? This is 100% undisputed, and this is not my words. This is the words of 2 different memos from the Department of Justice. The U.S. Constitution does not bar charging a sitting president with a crime. Again, the U.S. Constitution does not bar charging a sitting president, nor has the U.S. Supreme Court ever reached that decision. Thus, it is an open legal question. Can you charge a sitting president? We don't have any case law. We do have 2 memos drafted by the Department of Justice's Office of Legal Counsel about the very question, can you charge a sitting president? The first memo was drafted in 1973 in connection with Nixon and Watergate. The second in 2000 after Bill Clinton. Both memos conclude this, and again, this part's undisputed, and I agree with this. They conclude in writing that no president is immune from crimes they may commit, either crimes as president or before. They're not immune. They go on to say, in this 1973 memo, which is the big one everyone cites, as a general proposition, the Constitution does not require that an officer of the United States be impeached before criminal proceedings may be instituted against him. So again, general proposition is the Department of Justice legal memo 1973, reaffirmed in 2000, an officer of the United States does not have to be impeached before criminal proceedings. The general rule right there. But they make one exception. And you might guess what that is. The President of the United States. That's the only exception. Not even the Vice President. The President is the only one. Why? Well, their rationale, and it's well intended, they say, because if you have a president charged with a crime, in their words, it will hamstring the operation of the whole governmental apparatus, both foreign and domestic affairs. And they add, exact quote, the spectacle of an indicted president still trying to serve as chief executive boggles the imagination. 1973 memo. In 2000, Department of Justice goes back through it, reaffirms that completely. Same conclusions. Their concerns, I will be honest, their concerns are valid. Their concerns that a president will be distracted, it'll be a major spectacle, those are valid. But they are outweighed by a situation where you have a president of the United States who has, we know now, committed crimes involving election fraud that helped him get elected. Donald Trump is not a legitimate president. He is clearly not. He was worried about Russia making him illegitimate, and I never subscribed to that. This is different. He's illegitimate. Now, he's still protected. He's in the office, so I'm not arguing he's illegitimate and we can do whatever we want. I'm going back at their actual argument. Their argument is twofold. Hamstrings the operation of the government, and it's a spectacle. But here's what undermines their very argument. Impeachment is enshrined in our Constitution. They agree the president should be impeached first. When a president is being impeached, it also makes them lose focus from their job because they're focused on saving their career and not being removed. And it's also a spectacle. Just look at Bill Clinton's impeachment trial. It grabbed headlines, and his impeachment and his trial, headlines 1998 all the way through mid-1999. The trial of Bill Clinton alone, just the trial part, was in the Senate. It took 5 weeks from January 7th, 1999 to February 12th, 1999. Clinton was then acquitted. 5 weeks. That's longer than Paul Manafort's trial. They just took 3 weeks. Congress is slower than the federal courts. A federal trial of Donald Trump would not take months and months like they would do in Congress. It would be swift. It would be quick. We'd get justice. Secondly, they argued, Department of Justice, in their 2 memos, the president will be distracted and hamstring the operation of the whole government if he has to deal with criminal charges. President Clinton served as president while dealing with all of this. While being on trial for 5 weeks, the government continued to function. There was no problem whatsoever. And if it really becomes too much of a burden for the president to do his job, and it could, well, there's an easy remedy. It's called the 25th Amendment. The 25th Amendment allows the president to voluntarily transfer his power to the vice president for a designated period of time until he can say he is no longer incapacitated. When presidents have got under medical procedures where they had anesthesia, they have done this. They simply write a document, they give it to the speaker, they give it to the Senate president. I'm going under this. And as soon as they get back out, they write another thing and they get their powers back. So Donald Trump, if he wants to focus for 5-6 week trial on just his trial, he can give his powers to the vice president. So the argument that the government will shut down is gone. It does not exist because Bill Clinton functioned as president while under trial. And he can turn over his powers to Mike Pence for the time he's on trial if he chooses to. That's up to him. Second argument, that the spectacle of an indicted president still trying to serve boggles the imagination. The impeachment of Bill Clinton is the very definition of a spectacle. It was on news night and day. It was everywhere. It took all the oxygen. We knew everything about Monica Lewinsky and any kind of sex act they did. That's a spectacle. It was so much of a spectacle that Justice Rehnquist, who was the Chief Justice who presided over the case, did so in a robe that he had on his own created and designed with gold stripes on the side because he loved it. It came from a Gilbert and Sullivan opera. You don't get more of a spectacle than a Chief Justice with gold stripes on his robe on national TV every day. So to me, as a lawyer, going through the rationale of the Department of Justice, I say what they raise are valid issues, but they are not enough. And it's all balancing. It all comes down to balancing. It is not enough to let Donald Trump not be charged with a crime and not be brought to justice. And when you add to the fact that the crime we are talking about, specifically, I'm not even talking about Russia, this crime of violating Federal Election Commission laws was a fraud essentially within a month or two of the election to impact that election. And there's no doubt it had an impact. We can't quantify it. I'm not playing games with you. I don't know. But I know it only took 77,000 votes in 3 key states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, for him to win the Electoral College. We've never had a president who was involved in election fraud, who won that election, is now sitting in the White House. To me, that is a bigger spectacle than a trial. And here's the thing. Donald Trump, if he's indicted, would have his day in court and would have an opportunity through his attorneys to oppose it. An indictment, it would go to the Supreme Court. They would decide if a case can go forward against our sitting president. I hope they will. And then Donald Trump has his day in court. And if he's acquitted, he's president and the cloud is gone. But think about it. For the next 2 years, or God forbid 6 years, but at least the next 2 years, we have a person in the Oval Office who directed a crime to violate Federal Election Commission laws to help himself win that office. That cloud of criminality is much worse than the spectacle, as the DOJ calls it, of a trial. And I'm being completely blunt and I'm being completely honest and nonpartisan in this. There should be a trial and this should end. And if he's acquitted, it is over. And we don't discuss it again. And if he's convicted, he's gone. That's it. And Mike Pence becomes president. And Republicans, you get your Christian Sharia law that you want with Mike Pence. And we fight it out over policy, not criminality. And that's where we should be in this country. So, to me, The Department of Justice, their mission is stated on their website. It quotes, it says to seek just punishment for those guilty of unlawful behavior and to ensure fair and impartial administration of justice for all Americans. Fair and impartial administration of justice for all Americans, only one way to do it. If you try to do the impeachment route, it will not happen. The GOP will not allow that. So we will have a man guilty of crimes in our White House, meeting with world leaders, trying to get things done domestically and in foreign policy. He is a criminal. The only way to lift that cloud is to have a trial. And if you don't do that, if you do not indict him and charge him, the DOJ is not being consistent with their mandate to ensure fair and impartial administration of justice for all Americans. This is what I think. I feel very strongly there should be an indictment of Donald Trump. We allow the courts to decide once and for all, can a president go forward with an indictment when they're in office? I think the court says yes. And we have the trial and it's over. It's over for both sides. It's done. The country moves on.